no one could even imagine that a jumbo jet could ever disappear in 21st century, like in the era of our technology and how advanced we are, and we can find a tiny little submarine somewhere in the ocean. And if you remember, like Kennedy Jr., when he crashed, like how fast his plane was found, and tiny little Cessna, if I'm not mistaken. So all of a sudden, this jumbo jet MH370 Malaysian Airlines goes missing, and nothing. It's just almost like the world got so dumb that we can't find this jumbo jet. Maybe give people little history of what happened, because most people may not know. Well, not most, actually,
Yeah.
some people may not know. Maybe give us some history about it.
Yeah, well, MH370, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, there were two planes that disappeared actually within a couple months of one another, and MH17 was the other one, to not get confused. That's the one that was shot down between Ukraine and Russia during the conflict. MH370 was flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing on March 7th, March 8th, depending on your time zone, of 2014. So this was 10 years ago that this plane disappeared. And it became the biggest news in the world for days, weeks, even months, because everybody was wondering, where did this plane go? We didn't even have any real strong clues for days. I mean, this plane disappears 40 minutes into its flight between Kuala Lumpur and Beijing, just goes dark. The news stories the next day, though, were not consistent. They would be saying, well, it disappeared off radar at 1840 UTC, but when you look at a map, you can realize that that's like 2 hours into the flight, but you're telling us the plane went dark over the South China Sea, which is only 40 minutes into the flight. So right away, people that can do math are wondering, like, wait, what? Why am I hearing different discrepancies in what happened? And then a few days later, they tell us, well, just kidding. It didn't actually disappear over the South China Sea. It just went dark there. And then it turned around, like almost a 180-degree turn back. And you're like, wait, what? You're like, now it's starting to sound like an emergency event. And then it flies towards this airport, Penang, and for some reason doesn't land there. And then they say, well, the military radar was actually tracking it. Sorry, we didn't tell you that for like 5 days. And you're kind of wondering, okay, well, why would you not tell us that right away? And this becomes a repeat trend where the officials in the press conferences will not answer any direct questions. The families are freaking out, crying. And then 5 days after the plane disappeared, all of a sudden, unnamed U.S. intelligence sources start dropping to the media like CNN that the plane went into the South Indian Ocean. You're going, the South Indian Ocean? You're like, well, wait, you just said this plane turned back over Malaysia and that we caught it on radar going northwest towards like the Middle East, but now it's in the South Indian Ocean. And so all these theories start posting out there about plane was taken to Pakistan, plane was remote controlled to this military base, Diego Garcia. And then
Pilot
other people were,
felt suicidal, right? Pilot
Yeah.
felt suicidal and wanted to
yeah,
look
that was the
over the homeland or something, because he was like thinking, where he grew up or something. Ridiculous theories, of
And what's
course.
funny about that is that if you look back at the history, and this is what I recommend people do, is like really look back at the old articles. Like the reason why I consider myself an expert, I've looked at all the old articles about this plane that are out there. And even some of them would say conspiracy theories. And one of the conspiracy theories was suicidal pilot. And it was one of the lowest percentage rated things after the plane disappeared because it just didn't match any of the flight path or anything didn't make any sense. But now it's become the number one theory that's out there. But what people don't realize is that the official story is that the plane just disappeared. The official story is not that it was a suicidal pilot. Actually, the officials ruled out suicidal pilot. And a lot of the experts that looked into it also said that this is not something they think the pilot could pull off. But you see these YouTube channels, these YouTube videos about aviation that have been promoting this suicidal pilot narrative because, it's kind of exciting that this person took this plane on this joyride. But at the same time, you're like, wait, a suicidal pilot went on an 8-hour joyride and they tried to like intentionally hide the plane. What are they doing? Like studying ocean topography to find the deep point in the plane? Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
If you're a suicidal pilot, you just crashed the plane. Germanwings 2015. The guy that locked out the co-pilot, he crashed the plane in under 10 minutes from the middle of the air, like emergency descent into the side of a mountain. Like
What's
that.
crazy
Yeah.
Yeah, not to interrupt, but what's crazy is that we've talked about this before behind the scenes, that I interviewed many air crash investigators, right? So, and me and Ashton had this like conversation back and forth, and where they lose me, these professionals, and I'm not going to call them so-called professionals because they are professionals, they just never handled case like this before. So they are going with what they know. They all say that, well, he tried ditching the plane on the water. Well, here's the problem with that. Why would a suicidal pilot try to like glide on the water and ditch the plane in a perfect condition? Like he's, like you said, German wings, just nose down, kill everyone, be done with it. That's suicidal pilot, not somebody who's trying to glide on the waves and not break up the airplane and save people so that they can be eaten by sharks or something. I mean, ridiculous, okay?
Yeah,
So,
but also there's another part too I want to bring up on that, which is that what ended up happening too is that this article got pushed out there. I think it was actually by Jeff Wise from the Netflix documentary, that was really just literal fake news that he invented, that with this idea that the pilot simulator had this planned route on it. Now, this, and a lot of people say that, oh, the pilot planned the route or whatever, and they practiced it. This is objectively false. It turned out that was just MH370 to Jeddah, and that these other points that they were connecting weren't actually even connected. They were just preset points in the simulator. And so this entire fake narrative of him planning it, FBI rules it out, officials rule it out, like that. It was just something they made up from whole cloth. So there's actually, if you really look at the evidence, there's no evidence of a suicidal pilot whatsoever. There's nobody that corroborates it at all. It's just a narrative that we've made up because, to your point, a lot of these people are professional investigators, but they've never dealt with a case this anomalous before. And then the last thing I want to say is something you said earlier. This is vitally important. In 2014, a Boeing 777 the size of a city block with 239 people on it does not disappear. Literally impossible to happen.
Right.
We know the United States government knows exactly what happened to this plane. We have this surveillance system, spy surveillance system that's mapping every corner of the planet. Boeing 777 is not flying for 8 hours without being seen by our spy satellite system. Doesn't matter where it is on this Earth. We have the sound surveillance system that picked up the Titan sub imploding by the Titanic. This is a tiny submersible, and they pinpointed the location of the submersible on the bottom of an ocean miles down below the ocean. We had Avi Loeb went to go pick up some microsphericals off the bottom of the ocean from this meteorite that came down in 2014. And the DOD told him exactly where to go. He goes in a boat. They pick up a few little balls of metal off the bottom of the ocean that the DOD knows hit the water. So we know beyond a doubt, the military knows what happened to this plane. The only question we should be asking is, why is the United States military like admitting that they know and not telling us exactly what happened?
Thank you for watching this report, folks. There's so much more that I'd love to dive into, but we can't, unfortunately, because we've got huge censorship from the big tech companies. So if you want to explore this topic further, check out this report and my entire library of uncensored content over at unified.tv. It's linked right below. A membership in Unified is going to give you unlimited access to hundreds of uncensored podcasts, investigative journalism, documentaries, films, and content that at one time was available on major streaming platforms like Netflix, but now is basically banned from the internet. So for just $14.99 a month, that's less than $1 a day, you're going to get access to all of it, and your subscription also helps keep the platform running free from censorship and corporate influence. So please consider supporting us and enjoy all of our unfiltered, thought-provoking content in return.